The following episode may contain explicit language and spoilers. Listener discretion is advised.
Do you have any idea what we're going to talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We're good at this, so we do it all right.
We're good at this. Okay.
Hello and welcome to What's Your Fandom, the podcast where myself and my good friend Stuart journey through the fandoms of film, TV, games, books and comics, flying our geek flags and talking our way through the multiverses. All of them. My name is Mike, and in this episode we talk about Back to the Future. We could not avoid talking about Back to the Future, even if we tried and even if we wanted to, because Back to the Future really is one of those fandoms that is still thriving. And it's really curious because they haven't created that much new content. It's just still thriving based on those original 3 films. Why? What makes it so good? What about it has caught the attention of everyone? Because it really is a firm favourite, not just with people who are really into this kind of thing, but with just the general public as well. People seem to love a bit of Back to the Future, and who can blame them? I feel like I should apologise in advance. Okay, I will. I'm going to apologise. Please accept my sincerest apologies, because at the time of recording this episode, I was incredibly tired. I don't know what was wrong with me. I decided to do a podcast and hit record, regardless of the fact that I was wiped out. And for the first half of this podcast, I am like loopy. I don't know what happened. I was tripping over my words. It was a mess, but it does make for quite a funny listen, so I've left it all in. You're welcome. So for the second half of the podcast, I think I really do find my feet again. I wake up again. I'm much more engaged. And there is a part at the end where I feel like I have a bit of a eureka moment about Back to the Future. And I never even thought about that question before. But when it comes up and I kind of answer it myself, I shock myself. Oh, what a tease. What an absolute tease. It just means you have to listen all the way to the end, quite frankly. And that is my job, to try and get you to listen all the way through. So anyway, let's not dawdle anymore. Let's get in our DeLoreans. Let's check the flux capacitor. Let's get to 88 miles per hour and get this flipping show on the road. Back to the Future on What's Your Fandom?
Great Scott. I mean, Great Stew. No, I meant Great Scott. Stuart, we find ourselves standing next to a DeLorean.
Wow.
What? Yeah, you feeling the car? I mean, literally feeling it, smoothing it, giving it a little pat on the mirror.
Yeah. Mirror.
Can you just do me a favor? Can you just put your flux away for a sec, please?
Sure.
Your capacitor is showing.
Turn off your time circuits.
God, yeah, sorry. Yeah, in case you hadn't guessed already, we're going to be talking about Back to the Future. Are you a fan?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What tell me about your kind of history with Back to the Future.
Well, again, it's another one of those fandoms that was just always in my childhood.
Same.
It was. I mean, that film came out in '85. I was born in '89. Yeah, my biggest memory of watching it, I must have been about 10 or 11, and I remember watching it with my father, and it was the first thing that I'd seen that was about like time travel.
Oh, I know.
And my father was explaining to me like the basics of sort of time travel, like, oh, well, because he's done this now, he's changed this in the future, and all these things. And you get to see like a flying car, so I mean, yeah, that was my sort of earliest memory of it, really. Yeah.
I just feel like this trilogy of films, it is I mean, I know we use this word a lot on this podcast, but it is incredibly iconic.
Totally.
And I feel like it's always been in my life as well. It had such a massive cultural impact, I think, on cinema. Because I know, because like think about sci-fi cinema, okay? Generally, sci-fi cinema is sort of not mainstream cinema, or certainly back then when it was released. You know, Star Wars did something incredibly special in the 70s, didn't it? It sort of it did, and then 80s. It took cinemas to that place, and I think that without that, perhaps films like Back to the Future wouldn't exist. But you're right; it's the first film that really introduced the world, and I mean like the general population, not just like the sci-fi nuts like us, about like time travel, and putting it in a car. I mean, even that idea in itself is genius.
Yes. Now, interestingly, I did actually read. I'm not 100% sure if this is exactly right.
Well,
But
have you been doing some light googling?
I have been doing some. Yes, I have been doing some research.
Okay. Oh, research to do this week,
yes.
is it? Oh, wow. Okay.
Upping it to research.
Wow.
Yeah, because research is Google and Wikipedia.
Of course it is. It's both of them combined to make that. Yes, of course.
Yes. But no, I was reading that the original idea for the time machine was not a DeLorean.
Okay.
It was originally a fridge freezer.
Are you serious?
I am serious.
How are you going to drive that at 88 miles an hour?
Well,
perhaps I've missed the point here. Okay, it was a fridge freezer. Okay.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that they changed it because they were worried that kids watching the film would copy that and would be climbing into their parents'.
Of course, get in the fridge.
Yeah.
Oh.
So with that in mind, then they decided to replace it with a car that can drive up to nearly 90 miles an hour. But luckily, kids didn't copy that, so that's okay.
I remember thinking that Marty McCool was just Marty McCool. Right, guys, I need to explain to you listeners, okay, that for some reason I've gone a bit loopy today. Okay,
Wow.
Work was quite taxing. Not to get too much into detail, but it was quite taxing, and my brain is a little bit frazzled. So clearly, I am mixing up everything. So Marty McFly. I remember thinking Marty McFly was like really cool. I remember thinking he was just really cool. He played in the band. He wore that gilet before it was fashionable.
Yes.
He had a pretty girlfriend. He was a rebel. But I don't know, I remember thinking he was just like a really cool, like all-American boy.
He had a skateboard.
He had a skateboard. You know, I can't skateboard.
Same.
I would I'm not safe on wheels. I mean, I'm safe in a car. I just mean having to balance on a board on wheels. I mean, that takes a certain amount of skill, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just being so impressed with him. And I mean, the skateboard sequence is just on its own. This is what I'm trying to say about when I say this is iconic, because even the first film by itself has so many iconic moments, iconic set pieces, iconic imagery. It seemed to kind of really take on board like pieces that have been absorbed by us all, like across the world. And like, you know, that the clock tower, and you understand all this is to start the ball rolling on the story of the fact we're going to go back in time. It's going to be working. It's going to be like, oh, that's not meant to be working. What's going on? You know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But just the skateboarding sequence is iconic.
Yes. Yeah, and I think what adds to that sort of scene as well, there's no way of talking about Back to the Future without mentioning the soundtrack. Jesus Christ.
I took a breath in to be really excited, then to be like, "Ooh, I know the soundtrack," and then I coughed and choked on my own air. Right.
Wow.
What's wrong with me today? This is either going to be the best podcast in the world or the worst episode we've ever done.
Brilliant.
Or what will I be editing out, dear listener? Who knows? Genuinely, the soundtrack, phenomenal.
Yeah.
I could sing it now.
you singing it now?
No, I could sing it now.
You
I'm
could
not
sing it.
going to sing it now. Let's not. I think I'm putting the listeners through enough as it is. I'm not going to sing as well. Please continue.
Yes. So yeah. So like I say, the soundtrack really like adds to the scene, doesn't it? Where you've got Huey Lewis in the News, Power of Love, and I found out that that song, they wrote that song for the film.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently they had producer Bob Gale and Steven Spielberg, producer and director Robert Zemeckis. They went to Huey and they said, "We'd like you to do a song for our film." But Huey Lewis was like, "Well, we never really like written for a film before, let alone like a time travel movie." And they said, "No, we don't want a song about," because he was going to title a song Back to the Future, and they said, "No, we don't want anything like that. We just want one of your songs that we can just play." And they were trying to get across to him that Marty McFly would probably listen to Huey Lewis in the News.
Yeah.
Which is viable completely.
Yeah.
And there's a cameo from, I'm guessing the lead guy is called Huey. Huey Lewis. Yeah, he has a cameo in the opening sequence, doesn't he?
Is he?
Yeah. I remember my dad telling me as a child when they obviously Marty's band is called the Pinheads. So
yes,
when they're trialing and they got those judges, the guy with the megaphone.
Oh
says,
no way! Is that him? You're just too darn loud.
Yeah.
That's him. Oh, I did not know that. That's clever. I like stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really do like stuff like that. Not just the music though. Okay, because the music is incredibly important in this film actually, in terms of the band playing at the end of the Fish Under the Sea dance and those songs there, the 80s stuff, but also the score.
Oh yes.
You hear it and you are instantly transported into the Back to the Future trilogy.
Yes.
I love when a score has that power.
Yeah. I think what's great about the score in it is that I find, I don't know when you, if you're like this, if you're like me, but I find it really like uplifting. I can't help but smile like when I hear it.
It is.
And it's just epic.
Is that like a nostalgia thing as well though? Is that like you thinking back to like being a kid and watching these films and I don't know. There's got to be a certain amount of nostalgia connected, I think, to these things because it was the 80s and they were played to death. They were in my house on video, VHS. Yeah. Actually, funny story. So I had the VHS. This is a bit of a let's go back in time with Mike. Remember VHSs? I had VHS of this film, and something happened. Some accident happened where we accidentally recorded over a portion of it.
Oh.
Now, the thing that we recorded was a cartoon. It was about the City of Gold, the lost City of Gold. I didn't tell you what it was about other than maybe adventurers trying to find the lost City of Gold. I have no memory of it whatsoever other than this very short, like 2 or 3 minute clip, which cuts into our VHS version of this film right at the point where the bit that's recorded over is the bit where George McFly stands up to Biff at the end. Like, literally, you didn't see him arrive. You saw her in the car with Marty, and then it cuts away, and the next thing you know, George is reaching his hand down, and she's getting out of the car.
Right.
So quite a pivotal moment in the plot, right? And, do you know, until I was a lot older and got these films on DVD, like, I genuinely couldn't remember a time when that portion of the film had been seen. I couldn't remember because it just had been so long.
Wow.
Like, I'm talking years and years and years. And I was just like, oh, this is the part where it cuts in. And then years later, even if I watch it now, I'll be like, oh, this is the part that I didn't see for about 20 years because I recorded over it. I used to sit right by the TVC and watch these things. You know, I was really excited. I would be like right up close to the screen. I'd be like, sit back, you're gonna hurt your eyes. Your brains are gonna dribble out your ears. And I'd be like, yeah, but Marty McFly is on. And I love the concept, you're right, the concept of time travel and learning what could happen if we were in, could go wrong, and the paradox ideas and stuff. This really was my first introduction to it too.
Mm.
And I find it fascinating still. But I think as well, this film's got a lot going for it. There's an awful lot. If you even just now, we were talking about these really cool characters. We haven't even got to Doc yet, but we will. We have cool machines that travel in time. We have the actual time travel. We have the mistake that makes then in possibly wiping out his own existence, this paradox thing. We've got this amazing score, and this is like a family film.
Yes.
Was it marketed as a family film, do you think?
I don't know. I know they made a point of saying that they wanted it to be a comedy.
It is funny. It is
yes.
funny. There's funny stuff in this.
Yeah.
Coming of age story.
Yeah. I think I don't know if it was I don't know where the marketing was. I suppose it was probably for the younger audiences, wasn't it? I mean, you got this cool guy with a skateboard who can drive a fast car and go back in time.
Yeah, exactly. It's got all that stuff in it. But I just find this idea that learning that, you can go back and he's meeting his parents when they were his age. Like, it was probably the first instance where I thought that my parents have been my age.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
it's got, and at the heart of it, it's got this really cool family story. This family at the heart of it who have to overcome adversity in the form of, well, lots of forms, but of course, to George having to stand up to Biff, and Marty trying to be, wants to be proud of his family, but he's embarrassed of them, and it's, I don't know, it's just so clever, and it's such a simple. They're all simple ideas in a way, and they've all been put together in one really clever package.
Yes. Yeah, I think I remember when I first met my wife, we'd started watching like The Big Bang Theory together and stuff. And you know what it's like in Big Bang where they make all these references to other pop culture and they have their time travel conversations.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, Natalie hadn't seen Back to the Future.
What?
Which I could not believe because I was just perplexed.
Yeah.
Bewildered, flabbergasted, and completely outquaffed.
Good grief.
So, needless to say, we had to watch it. I was like, we've got to watch it. And the good thing about that film, I think it's a good starting point for people that don't understand how time travel works. I think that's the film to take them to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because if you're going to introduce somebody to like a big sci-fi idea like that, you've got this like, coming of age family comedy at the heart of this, and this adventure, and there's bullies to overcome, and there's big, chases and cool music, and it's got all that normal, almost domestic stuff as a layer, which it's a really good entry film. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I think as well. What's good about it is that I've always found, and I think Back to the Future more than any of the fandom that we've discussed, right, and probably more than any of the films I've ever watched. For me, Back to the Future has got to be the most quotable set of movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I feel you actually, because it could potentially, it could have gone cheesy, and
Yeah.
it skirts that line, I think, very, very well.
Yeah, I think it's just, like I say, it's just got so many like, not just I say iconic. It's not iconic, but a lot of like great one-liners and a lot of funny lines and pretty much catchphrases.
Go on then, give us some.
Well, obviously, my favorite one is, "What are you looking at, butthead?"
Oh yeah.
And I just think like Tom Wilson came up with that apparently, right? The actor who played Biff. He sort of coined the phrase butthead, and I think what I like about the phrase is that it's such a simple insult to start with, but it's also really it's a stupid insult.
It
It's
is.
it's kind of an insult like a jock or a thick person would come up with.
I
And
love it. I
I
love
just
it.
it's on the nose, but it's just so funny calling somebody a butthead. I mean, can you imagine, like, if that was in Britain, we wouldn't say the word butt. We'd have to say like arse.
Yeah.
Imagine calling somebody like an arse head. Just
Arse face.
arse face. Yeah.
Oh my
You know
god.
what?
I
I'm gonna go
didn't.
back. I'm gonna go back to using butthead on people now.
I think you should, but I didn't realize that he coined that phrase. That's cool.
Yeah. And similarly with the make like a tree. I think that was him as well.
Oh god, that's brilliant. That's still funny now.
But as a child, I didn't understand that because
No.
I was like 10 or 11. I didn't get why it was funny.
Yeah, it's clever, isn't it? How that there's bits in it for the grown-ups and there's bits in it for the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is cool. And then let's talk about Doc.
Yes.
Like Doc is, I mean, just a brilliant. I can't speak. Oh my god, I'm so excited. No, he's just I don't want to say the word iconic again because that's all I've said.
That's all we said.
But he is brilliantly played,
Yes.
and instantly, just you're with him and you want a friend like Doc.
Yes.
Why is Marty friends with Doc?
That's an excellent question. I genuinely don't know. And I don't think we meant to know.
Well, that's just weird.
It is, isn't it?
That's really strange. It's just taken for granted.
Yeah. So we have a 17-year-old kid that's friend with an eccentric, what do you call him, physicist or scientist at least. Who's kind of a bit of a recluse. He's got all those clocks in his house and whatnot. Yeah, it does make you wonder how on earth did those two characters cross paths?
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's really weird.
Yes. Now Marty's got a key to his house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not trying to imply anything, by the way. I'm just just going by what I actually see in the films. That he's obviously some level of trust there because he trusts him to go into his house because he had to. They had the thing with all the clocks and they had that crazy giant amplifier.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, in terms of
Doc is brilliant.
He is brilliant, isn't he? I think I don't think you can have anybody else other than Christopher Lloyd playing him.
No, I wouldn't be okay with it. No, I wouldn't. I do genuinely hope that these films they just remain these films. I mean, okay, there is a franchise, so I mean maybe we could talk about that a little bit because obviously when you think about the future, you do think about the films, but there is an sort of extended world out there now, not to the extent of what we have with other franchises, but like, I mean, there's a musical now in London, which I'm not a big musical lover, but I do feel quite compelled. I'm quite intrigued. I don't understand, but I want to know how they do it on stage.
Yes, I'd be curious. Yeah.
And so that's happened, and that's really recent, isn't it? That's happened.
I think so. Yeah.
Do you remember the cartoon series?
I don't think I ever watched it, but I've seen images of the animation. But I never watched it because it was in the 90s, wasn't it?
It was early 90s, and I do remember watching it because I was a fan. I don't remember like the stories as such, but I do remember so the beginning and end of each episode, just the beginning, perhaps I'm not a bit hazy here, but Christopher Lloyd as Doc would like, the screen would kind of fade in as if he'd like pressed record on a camera and he was doing like an experiment or something, and he was talking to the audience about the experiment he was doing, and then it would cut to the episode, and I'm assuming that the experiment had something to do with the episode that you watched. So and he either bookended each episode or he was just at the beginning of each one introducing it. I can't remember, but it was him. It was Doc, and from what I remember, I haven't looked into this. Perhaps I should have, considering that we're doing a podcast on it. But from what I remember, it was set like after the trilogy. So it was meant to continue the story of their adventures, and of course, they kind of travelled in time. But I have no recollection other than that. So I just have this vague memory of that cartoon and seeing him again. But like, I don't understand like how it actually adds to the canon of the story or anything like that. I don't know whether it's considered part of the actual story or not. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously it was made and it's there, but I'm not sure if anything significant enough happened in it to be, worthy of continuing their story, if you get me.
Yeah. I think they've said, haven't they, though, like it's Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, like they wrote this together because they were students together. So this is like their baby. They wrote all this themselves. I know at one point, because they shot 2 and 3 like back to back.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know, like in the day, I'm sure it was Robert Zemeckis. I'm sure it was something like they would spend the day shooting 3, and then he would catch a plane. I'm not sure where he was going, somewhere within the US, right? And he would go to some hotel, and he would do sound editing on Back to the Future 2, and then he'd have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get back on a plane to go back to the future. No, but not Back to the Future. It was there. To go back to continue shooting Back to the Future 3. So it's madness, isn't it? I think as well, I know they have said, because it's their property, because that's what it is, really. They've very clearly said that they would do everything in their power to stop it getting rebooted, and no sequel. They've put everything down on that they will not do it.
That makes me happy, though.
Same. I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
Because they've said that they don't want anybody else to play Marty McFly other than Michael J. Fox, and obviously, given Michael J. Fox's condition and stuff, and
of course, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, wasn't he? I don't know when. I'm gonna guess like early 2000s.
Do you know what? I think it may have even been earlier than that.
Oh, really? Okay.
I do know that he said that he went to the doctors because he noticed that his baby finger was twitching.
Right.
I know he's had it for over like 30 years.
But the thing is, he's raised as well like so much awareness for Parkinson's disease, and obviously money as well, because he's got a foundation, I think, like a charity. That he works with them for to make money, and he's obviously uses the Back to the Future stuff to get people to donate and stuff, and that's great. That is, I love that.
Yeah, he's got his own. It's the Michael J. Fox Foundation.
That's it.
But he was 29 years old when he was diagnosed.
Flipping heck.
But
that's young as well, isn't it? That's really young.
Yeah. Well, he was diagnosed in 1991, but then he didn't disclose that until 1998.
Oh, okay. So that's right. I was thinking then he didn't tell people till later on. Yeah.
So, I mean, but then if you look at like Christopher Lloyd, I know obviously Christopher Lloyd is older and stuff, but even he has said, they've asked him, like, would you ever consider doing another one? And he said, as long as the original creators are involved, the original cast are involved, and if there's a story worth telling.
That's a fair answer. I think that's absolutely fair.
Yes.
Because, these films are still played, like, all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think they know, don't they? Like, they've had I think they respect the creators enough to know that, because everything is getting rebooted these days, isn't it? They're, everything is like sort of being redone. And I think they're aware of that. And I think they just know it's just a matter of time before, it comes back around, because it's Universal Studios. So, yeah, I think they knew it's only a matter of time before it came back around, and they're like, oh, should we reboot?
But the thing is, as well, when you're talking about rebooting, like this is, I know this is a weird thing to say, because obviously sequels and spin-offs and stuff all are happening all the time, but he's right. It has to have a decent story to add to what already exists without repeating the story they've already done.
Mm.
But obviously, with time travel, like we know that kind of story, it never gets old
No.
because everybody, I think, is genuinely fascinated with the idea of moving through time.
Yeah.
So, would you go back or forwards if you were in the DeLorean? If you had a choice right now, you got in the car and you had one trip,
Ooh.
using the kind of is it 30 year they used it 1985
Yes.
1955. So if you could go 30 years into the future or 30 years into the past, what would you do?
Man. Well, it's a weird one because I think if I go back 30 years, I'll be 4 again.
No, you won't be 4 again. You'll be your age now, traveling back in time
Oh, yes, of course.
using the rules that are in Back to the Future.
Ah,
Yes.
I was going to say, like...
Yeah, no, not yeah. You physically would drive the DeLorean as you are now, and you would go back in time.
Oh, no, then. I would probably... No, I'd probably go forward.
Yeah,
I'd go
right.
forward 30 years.
Because what happened in 1993 that you want to see again.
Well, I mean, Dumb and Dumber came out.
Oh, we'll just leave that there, shall we? Oh god. But okay, let's talk about I want to talk about the fact that obviously the first film was so successful. They then decided to make 2 sequels at once.
Yes.
I know you touched on it earlier. But that in itself, like now it isn't such an unusual thing, but I think back then it would have been quite unusual.
Yes.
And the second film, now this is a funny one to say, but would you say the second film is better than the first film?
Ooh, it's very difficult to pick a favorite out of those 3. I think in a lot of ways, I do think the second one is better.
What makes it better?
I think, other than the fact that you get to see like what 2015, what they envision what it would be like.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
it is.
But I also like it's a more kind of layered plot, isn't it? I think, like Old Man Biff has got the almanac, stole Marty's idea. He's messed up the timeline.
Yeah.
And now there's more of a kind of a mission aspect.
Yeah.
Where Marty has now got to fix the timeline.
Time is broken now.
Time is now broken because of Biff. Really because of Marty, because it was Marty's idea, and then Biff just picked his idea.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think that was good for showing that there are sort of layered consequences to time travel. And time travel in the wrong hands, in this case Biff's hands, can have dire consequences on the space-time continuum.
I love the second film, see. I don't know. I can't, because I love the first one too. I think the third one isn't my favourite, but I think the end films in trilogies are sometimes quite a difficult thing to do anyway.
Yes.
And obviously it being like a Western does change things quite a lot tonally. But for some reason, the second one, I'm drawn to it. I think I must have been really fascinated with the idea of not just kind of the idea that from the first film of them because they accidentally interrupted the parents' meeting. But this is a much larger scale. The whole world has changed in the second one. It's a parallel timeline. And that just to me was like that blew my mind.
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating concept. And even now, the idea when people when there are other shows and films and stuff that show parallel versions of reality, I'm just drawn to it.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that like one event can like change everything.
Which is true.
Yeah.
That's true in day-to-day life.
Yes. Yeah. But I think
it was huge. Go on.
I think what's good in Back to the Future 2 is it kind of brings an element of sort of darkness to it because of what Biff does. like you don't. I don't know how to explain it. It's not too like on the nose. Like for example, like in that timeline, like he shot George McFly and he's dead.
Yes.
But like you don't see it,
No.
but you know he's dead.
Oh, and it's grim, innit? You feel lost. You feel like, oh my gosh, this life is ruined. And
Yeah.
also, but I think it's even portrayed like if you think about the kind of wholesome way that oh, what's his mother called? I've gone blank.
Lorraine.
Thank you. You know in the beginning of the first film, she's sort of she's a mum, you know, cooking dinner in the oven, and her brother's in jail, and I don't know. It seemed, and she's kind of a bit sort of has a bit less money, and by the end of that film, she's different in appearance. She's not as overweight. She's got different hair. She's taking care of herself. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause that's the whole idea that Marty went back and did change things, but for the better.
Yeah.
And when Biff goes back in the second film, she's there. She's had plastic surgery. She's looking a bit tarty, you know, in that kind of dress. That's the image they're pushing forward. So even like showing that and that big skyrise with all the bikers out the front and all that kind of it is shown as a bit of like a hellscape, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And it just showed like what Biff was sort of capable of had he had his own way, which he did.
The bars on the windows and stuff of the houses as well, just all those things, little things, and you were just like, oh, this is not a good place to have gone. He's not home anymore, and suddenly you felt like, but he's meant to be home because it's the right time, and suddenly it was like, shit, it's gone wrong. It's just really gone wrong, and what's gone wrong where, and they don't know. I loved all that.
Yes. Yeah, I think, but again, I feel like the writers really did sort of think of everything, especially with time travel and stuff. And, you know, they had this concept of people getting physically like erased and stuff. I know they had. I'm sure it was a deleted scene because I don't think it was in the original cut of the film. But when Old Man Biff drops off the almanac to young Biff, when he goes back to his timeline, he then gets erased.
Oh, I don't think that is in the film. That would make sense, though.
Yeah, because he won't exist because Biff's now changed events.
Yeah.
And they show it, and they show him, like you see him like physically fade away.
Yeah.
And
that's like, cool.
Yeah.
And so I like the idea of we saw more of the future.
Yes.
We haven't even mentioned the hoverboard.
The hoverboard.
I mean, how many children would like give all their limbs to have a hoverboard? Children and adults, but even growing up, just thinking, I need a hoverboard. And you know, I don't know if this is a memory or if this was a dream or if this is just something that I wanted to do, but I have this vague recollection of like getting a plank of wood and duct taping it to my foot, to my shoe, and holding my foot in the air as if it was hovering, as if I was standing on it.
Yeah,
that might be truth. I might have made it up. I'm not entirely sure because my memory is not great. But that just came flooding back to me, so I have a feeling it's real.
Wow.
Pretending I had a hoverboard, desperate for those laces that did themselves up.
Power laces, man.
And just absolutely desperate to be able to rehydrate a Pizza Hut pizza at home.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Pizza Hut was just the pinnacle of restaurants for me as a kid. I bloody loved a Pizza Hut. And it's probably Back to the Future's fault.
Probably. Yeah. I think like I say, I like their interpretation of what the future would look like was really interesting. Because there was a video, I think it came out around about the 30th anniversary, because obviously we would have caught up in real time, so we would be in
of course
future,
yes, of course,
in 2015, right? And they were talking about how many of these things did Back to the Future get right.
I'm sorry, can I just pause you a sec, because you just said we would have been in the future back in 2015. And I just thought to myself, I completely understand what you just said, and that says so much about you and me. Yes, sorry. How many things they got right? Go on, continue.
Right. So they were talking first of all about 3D technology. You know, like 3D films.
Yeah.
They had the thing with the Jaws.
Of course.
Wasn't it like Jaws 20 or something?
Something like that. Yeah.
So there was that. They had the hoverboard. Okay, we don't really have actual hoverboards. They were talking about what are they called? Segways.
Yes.
Segways, right? So like
Yes.
kind of hoverboard-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they were just talking about like all this stuff, like how it was kind of right. And it's interesting, isn't it? How I mean, these films were, that was made back in like 1985, right? So what Robert Zemeckis, Bob Gale, they must have sat and gone, oh, what will the world be like in 30 years? And then they came up with all this stuff. And how crazy is it that they weren't far off with some of it?
Yeah, that is actually quite crazy.
It's maddening, isn't
But
it?
it's interesting because I mean, you say that, right? Because this is the part where it can get difficult. I think anybody when they're trying to put on screen a vision of the future, it's really hard to make it authentic
Yes.
because the brain, the imagination just goes a bit wild. It's like, yes, the cars will fly. Of course they will, because in 30 years' time they'll fly.
Yeah.
And that's a bit pie in the sky, isn't it? But obviously we have mobile phones.
Mm.
But they didn't. Did they have those in the film, or like some sort of something in the film like that?
There was some handheld devices, I'm sure.
Yeah, that
I'm
could
sure.
have been quite an interesting. That's interesting, but it's just sometimes it can be a bit like it's just hard to make it feel real. I think, and I suppose watching it as a kid, that became my idea of what the future would look like.
Yeah.
The influence these films have had is shocking, actually.
Yes. Yeah. Even there's a scene when they're in Marty's house. I think Jennifer's like snuck in and she's hiding from them. But it shows Marty Jr. Obviously that's Marty McFly's like son, isn't it? When he's wearing like these goggles. And I'm sure he's watching TV in the goggles, and I think that's basically VR.
Yeah, true. You're
That's what we
right.
have now.
And the idea of watching all those screens at once.
Yes.
Because we're
Multiple
all
screens.
we're all multitasking stuff like that all the time now.
Mm.
We're on our phones watching the telly, with the radio on.
Yeah.
We are in this house anyway.
Yes.
No, you're right there. Actually, that's true. I want to just quickly, whilst I remember, because my brain isn't. I need to put my brain in like a pencil sharpener. That's how I feel today, right? My brain is a little bit squishy around the edge. It's a bit blunt. I need to put it in a pencil sharpener, twist it round a bit, and like get that point back.
Yes.
This first of all, I want to talk about very briefly the recasting of Jennifer, because I think that I don't know, the lady from The Boys, isn't she? She's in The Boys series 1. Was the new Jennifer. I really liked her. Have you watched The Boys?
I haven't watched it yet.
You haven't watched The Boys, Stuart? No. Okay, well, she's in that. We're not gonna. Let's not digress. She's in that. I remember thinking, oh, it's her from Back to the Future. That's amazing. I haven't seen her for years. And I remember, I think she was really good. I remember thinking, oh, it's the same scene, but is that the same woman? And that was probably my first instance of seeing somebody else playing the same part, and them having to recreate that scene. And that led my brain to the point that I'm trying to make, is the fact that throughout these 3 films, they repeat a lot of scenes.
They do.
This is a really clever tool, in my opinion. You're calling back your own film.
Yes.
By repeating a scene with the same actors playing slightly different parts.
Yeah.
That's quite bizarre on paper.
Yes. It is.
Do you think it works?
I do think it works. I think this is why I believe that I think a lot of people do get confused with the first 2 films over which is which, because you might envision a scene and it's like, oh no, that's not until the second film. Because, as you said, didn't it? Because there's time travel involved, and I think because he goes back to 1955 again in number 2.
Yes, that's probably it.
So you can't differentiate the films between the fact that, like, oh yeah, he went back to 55 in the first one. Well, he did in the second one as well, actually.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But it's just the bit where he wakes up, isn't it? That scene where he's asleep and his mum is like bringing him round in the dark, and she turns the light on and he sees his mum in different versions, and he's just like, 1955, and
Yeah.
then what in the second film? What's he say in the second film? I can't remember what he says. The like 45th floor or something, and then he's like, what?
Yes.
And it's the same scene repeated, like, and it's for comedy, because it's comedy, but it's just, I mean, there's no other film that could get away with doing the same scene 3 times
True.
and calling it a success.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I agree with that.
Madness. That's madness. Yeah, so I just thought that really was interesting, because that as a kid, and then when you understood what was happening in the scene and when they were and where they were, I remember feeling quite like, oh, I understand what's happening. He's in a different time. That's the same actress, but she's playing a different part, and it's like it taught me, I guess, lots of stuff about films and narrative that I didn't know that I needed to know before I knew, and
Yes.
now I know. But really, I mean, I have to. Back to the Future, okay? All cards on the table before we get to talk about the third film. Back to the Future is not a series of films that I watch regularly, okay? I feel like probably I've watched it too many times now that I could probably recite it if I wanted to. No, I'm not going to. But at the same, so like if it's on telly, I don't. Sometimes it's something that if it's on telly and Jay and I are about to eat our food, we might put it on because it's just there. We can watch it comfortably and easily whilst we're watching food.
Yes.
And some days, and you might get sucked into it because it's been a long time. You're like, oh, this is good, man. We haven't watched this for a long time. So you get sucked in. You end up watching an extra hour than you thought you would. It's that kind of film. It isn't a film that I go to the box set and put on to watch. Do you get me? It's not. It hasn't. I think it's probably because I did that in my teens and 20s. So it's just. I think it's just. I may have to come back to it again in the future and try and watch it again.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested to see, like, it's been so long, like, what the special effects, like, have the special effects held up? Are they still okay, or are they a bit ropey?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I have not watched it in a while. I did go searching for it on like Sky and Amazon Prime and stuff like that. But on Amazon
Other
Prime,
streaming services are available.
yes, I did check Netflix as well. But yeah, you got to pay for them. So it's like,
okay.
But when you mentioned the effects, there's the scene that always sticks out to me is that I've always been okay with effects in films when I think about when they were made.
Yes.
So, a film in the 80s, I can sort of forgive the effects because that's all they had.
Yeah.
But I do remember a scene, and I don't know if it was in the remaster. They might have put it in the remaster deliberately. I don't know. But the scene where he's at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. He's playing Earth Angel, and then he starts getting erased.
Okay.
So he's getting erased, and he's rubbish on the guitar, a bit like
Okay.
me. And then there's this moment where he's physically fading away, and he holds his hand up, and he's looking at his hand as it's fading. But the effects for the hand,
Right.
like, really, it must have been on the remaster because it just looks like pure CGI.
Right.
I don't know how to describe it other than that. It doesn't look like it's his hand. It just looks like a generic hand.
The way that you're describing it, though, I can imagine what you're saying. So I probably have seen it, and I do understand what you mean.
Yeah. Or you can sort of forgive it because, it's like, it came out in the 80s. I mean, how else can they make people physically disappear without actually making
Yeah,
them
no,
physically disappear?
absolutely. I think that the effects, it's quite effect heavy, isn't it? But I suppose they did quite a lot practically, I guess, too. There's a lot in this film because they would have had to, and
Yes.
that probably does ground it and give it some authenticity. Interestingly, though, I also feel like these films probably started my mild obsession with time travel. They probably sparked it anyway, because, I mean, anything to do with time, and I'm very interested. I remember, seeing the Terminator films and just thinking, okay, the time travel aspect interests me. Watching Doctor Who, obviously, as you know, I do. It's time travel. Time travel fascinates me.
Yeah.
and trying to work it out. You know, like, but I like that. I like having the time travel puzzle.
Mm.
And it probably all came from this.
Yes.
But of course, the third part of the trilogy, the Western, so that was filmed the same time as number 2, which is massive with one undertaking. It's the same, but it's different.
Yes. Yeah. I kind of admire them for that in a way, because at least they gave us something different within the confines of a time travel trilogy.
I agree. It had to be different, otherwise it would just be another. What would they have done?
Mm. Yeah. I know that. I'm trying to think now. I think after the first film came out, like in terms of box office success, it did very well.
Yeah.
And I think they knew they had to do sequels, but they did say that 2 and 3 weren't as well received. Maybe they just, I don't know, probably because, like, all the hype had gone into the first film. And then I think when you kind of know what to expect.
I mean,
then it
possibly, but also I feel like that first film. I think, how can I word this? How can I word this, Stuart? Reach into my brain, sharpen it for me, and just help. Right. So what I'm trying to say is what my mouth's still moving, and I haven't said anything yet. Is that the first film uses the time travel as a plot device to tell the story about the people.
Yes.
And I know that the second and third are doing the same, but the second and third become a bit more sci-fi. I think
Right.
it's not just about the big experiment to get the timing right, to get the lightning to strike for him to go. Like that's kind of like, to get Back to the Future, obviously. As that first film ends, isn't it, with the car flying? That was just put in there, wasn't it, as just like as a bit of a joke to see.
Yeah.
What a great way to end the film. What a big moment. And then them realizing, shit, now we have to carry on with this, and that's where that happened. But like, it goes. They go to the future. There's flying cars. There's hoverboards. There's then an alternate timeline. It does into a dystopian past, I guess, is what you would call it from his point of view. From that point of view. So I think it does just get a bit more involved in the kind of sci-fi and fantasy element. Then that it's not just about the people. Then it's about mending time.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps that alienated people, and then them having to then go and to the Wild West. It took all of my energy then not to say Wild West, and then to break into that very popular song by Will Smith.
Yeah.
But then it's having to adjust. Now, I personally think these are all assets to the trilogy. I think going from that kind of cute little family 50s drama with an element of sci-fi into that parallel world dystopian 80s and crazy future magic flying things, then going to the Wild West. I think each kind of cliffhanger does need to evolve in a drastic way.
Yeah.
I like that, but I can understand. I'm a kind of, you and I are kind of, we are on the nerdier side of fandom, so perhaps the general public maybe didn't warm to that as easily.
Yeah. I think maybe it's a case of, if that time period doesn't interest people,
True.
then that might be it as well.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, I have to talk. I know we've obviously talked about the individual films and what they bring, and not to be too negative about things, because Back to the Future did have its issues at the start with casting and setting up and stuff.
Yeah.
But we got to talk about Crispin Glover.
We can't not. How can we not? Well, we could not. I mean, he's only in the first film.
Yeah, that's true. He's been erased.
We should have spoken to him about him in the first third of this podcast, and then just stopped.
Done that.
No, I know.
Where do you stand on it? The whole issue with
right. So tell me. So just give me the kind of an idiot's guide to what happened.
Right. So Crispin Glover is notorious by directors and stuff that he's difficult to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So he was difficult on set, just being himself. He's a bit eccentric, and he disagreed with one of the fundamentals of the story, which he told Robert Zemeckis, and it got back to Bob Gale, which is that by the end of the first film, Marty's not only fixed the timeline, but he sort of improved the timeline for himself. So when he goes back to 1985, his parents are better people, as you said earlier. Like his mother's taking care of herself, his dad's a sci-fi writer, and he's got that cool pickup truck.
Yeah.
And Crispin Glover's point was that he thinks that sends a bad message to people, which is that money equals happiness.
Okay.
That's kind of a valid point,
It is a valid point.
but I don't think it's one you should make to the director of the film that you're in. I don't know. I think he was right, but I think he aired it in the wrong place.
So,
Okay.
and based on that, then,
Well, that was one aspect of it.
okay, continue.
Okay. So, because of that, this led to them really reconsidering, like, what are we going to do with Crispin Glover, because he's difficult to work with. He said this thing. We don't really want him in the film, but he's meant to be in the film. So when they were writing the script for number 2, originally, he was going to be dead in every aspect of the film. They were going to have, when they traveled to 2015, they were going to say George McFly is dead in this timeline. And then when they did the alternate 1985, they were also going to say that he's dead. Then there was going to be a scene where they traveled to the 1960s, and they were going to say he's alive, but he's out of town.
I think his death in his death. I can't remember when he's dead. When in the second film, do you know when they say he's
Yes.
dead?
Yes.
What time is that? What is
So
that?
that's alternate 85.
Okay, so in alternate 85, that only has an impact because we saw him alive in the future.
Yes.
So I'm really glad they didn't just have him just be dead.
Yes.
But obviously they had to get somebody in to impersonate him.
Yeah. Now that, I was actually... So that's an actor called Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh my god, what?
You not heard of him?
Well, I've heard of Jeffrey Dahmer, but a very different one.
Wait, is it Jeffrey Dahmer? It is, isn't it?
Wait,
which...
Is it? Hang on, I'm furiously going to IMDb.
Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a second.
Because that
Oh, wait a minute.
doesn't sound right to me. Because Jeffrey Dahmer murdered a lot of people.
Do you know what? I think... Oh, no. My mistake. Jeffrey Wiseman.
Jeffrey.
What on earth? I don't know where that name...
I am so happy you called him Jeffrey Dahmer.
Wow.
That was wow. Are
Well-
you thinking murderous thoughts, Stuart? Do we need to have a talk?
No, I think it's because a lot of people felt like he killed the character.
Oh, there it is.
There we are. Pulled it back. Great.
Hold it back.
So, Jeffrey Wiseman...
You nearly said Dahmer again, didn't you?
I took a pause.
I heard it. I heard the pause. And I heard it say Dahmer, say Dahmer, say Dahmer in my head. Carry on.
Right, so, Jeff.
Jeff.
He was asked to do stand-in work for Crispin Glover. So at this point, he didn't know that he was replacing him, right? So they took him into makeup. Now, this was the issue, right? They took prosthetics, because they use prosthetics to make them look older, don't they?
They do.
In the second film, right?
Yeah.
So they took the prosthetics of Crispin Glover, and they put them on Jeffrey's face. And the makeup guy told Jeffrey, like, oh, Crispin's out. Like, you're taking his place. And when they put the makeup on him, they asked Robert Zemeckis, like, oh, what do you think? And Robert Zemeckis said, we look like we've got Crispin Glover, but without the trouble.
Ooh.
Yeah, bit diva-ish, right?
Ooh.
So they used Crispin Glover's molds for prosthetics on another actor's face. And then they had that actor hanging upside down, because he was upside down, wasn't he?
He was.
Right, and they actually told him this was meant for Crispin Glover. It was meant to be like a kind of cheap shot, like almost kind of like a revenge ploy after what he'd said in the first film.
Flippin' heck.
It's dark, right? So this actor now is basically playing George McFly, you don't know it's not him because you can't
No.
really see him because it's like wide shots and he's upside down.
Yeah.
You can't really see him properly. So Crispin Glover then he sued Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis. I think it was something like they settled it out of court for something like 750,000. And they've now put like a thing in like the Screen Actors Guild where now it's actually illegal to do that. That you can't take prosthetics from another actor and put them on somebody else's face. You can't do it, like.
Well, it's wrong.
Totally.
That's where I stand on it too.
Yes.
What they did was wrong.
Yes, I completely agree.
And it's different to go to Crispin Glover and say, we would like to use your image, we'd like to pay you for that image to continue our trilogy. And do you know what I mean? That's different because of creative differences. We're not going to work together. And if he disagreed, they would have had to kill him, wouldn't they, or got him off screen, or he's just conveniently out of town, or he's gone on the fishing trip with Jennifer. But yeah, it's bad. That's bad. It's bad showmanship. That is. That's not good.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I know they did say as well that he did ask for more money, but he doesn't really sort of go into like the specifics because obviously stuff like that gets like quite complicated, doesn't it? But yeah, so he kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say it was completely his fault, but I do definitely think there was stuff he could have done to avoid the situation. But I do think Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, they could have done things as well.
I mean, it just sounds bitter, to be honest. It sounds.
Yeah.
We don't know the ins and outs. We weren't there feeling it, but it just sounds like the directors were sticking two fingers up to him and being like, "We're going to use your image and pretend, your voice, mimic your voice, and hang you upside down." And it's just so not okay on so many levels, and rightly shouldn't be allowed.
This is a bit spiteful, really, wasn't it?
It's really spiteful, and imagine being that guy.
Yeah. I think, like I say, it didn't help Matt as that he was eccentric and that he was a bit, like he used to do things in the first one apparently where like, he would like cut his hair like the night before, and then when it came time to shoot in the scene, editing was like a nightmare because now he looked a little bit different. The scene when, do you know when they're in the canteen in the school?
Yes.
And he's writing his book there and then.
Yes.
Right. Well, when he's talking to Marty McFly in that scene, the camera's over Michael J. Fox's shoulder, but Crispin Glover just wouldn't sit still apparently, and he was messing up the continuity of the shots, and they threatened to duct tape him to the seat.
Okay, to be fair, that's unprofessional.
Yes.
That's not okay. That's not good, and no wonder he got sacked then because of all these different things that were not okay, because you've got to perform, you've got to understand the whole picture and not just be so selfish like that.
Yes.
You're ruining everybody's time and effort and all the work that's going in. It all genuinely does cost money, and so that's not okay. But it equally is not okay what they did.
No.
Back. So it's just it's a shit show, really, isn't it?
Yes.
It's how not to do it.
Yeah, I do know that. I think Crispin Glover did say that he has worked with Robert Zemeckis like since that, because I think they were in Beowulf. Never seen that film, but
no,
I know.
Me either.
So they're fine. They patched up, but yeah, he's not happy with Bob Gale because then it's been over like 30 years now. In fact, in 2 years' time, Back to the Future will have been out for 40 years.
Flip an heck.
Yeah. I got that right. Did I get that right? Yes, 2025.
Yeah.
So, and they still haven't patched stuff up. I doubt they ever will. I think it's just one of those things. But I think that's why whenever they do these anniversaries and stuff, Crispin Glover's not there. Like,
yeah, and you can understand that. It's an example of what not to do in Hollywood, I think.
Yeah.
And then the third film, obviously, it ends a trilogy. Do you think it's a satisfying conclusion?
Yes, I think so. I think, obviously, they have a new time machine, don't they, by the end of the third film?
They do.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
I think I like obviously the way that final shot is now the train takes off, flies into the camera, roll
Yeah,
credit. I
yeah.
think had they done a scene where like it flies off and then like 3 seconds later another train appears behind Marty and Doc jumps out and he's like, Marty, you gotta come with me. I think I'd be like, oh, this again. Like I'm happy that it ended.
Yes,
That it
agreed.
concluded.
Agreed. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I do like the third film. I do. I really do. But it's just, like you said, perhaps westerns aren't my favorite thing to watch.
Yeah.
So I know it's not a western, but it's got a lot of elements of western. It's just a bit more removed, isn't it? It's a bit more high fantasy then.
Yes.
So that's just and the introduction of the wife, the lady that becomes the wife. What's her name? I've gone blank.
Oh, is this with the Irish family?
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
No, the Doc's like love interest. What's her name?
Oh, Clara Clayton.
Yes.
Teacher.
Yeah. I quite liked her introduction, actually, her into it, to give him a bit more of an emotional story as well, and and a reason to stay. Obviously, what he does do. Yeah, no, I do enjoy it, and I remember watching, the final bit where they're going on the train and they're going past, they can't get past this point, otherwise it goes wrong, and all the things exploding, making them go faster. That's thrilling. I love that.
Oh, yes.
I think that's brilliant. I really, really enjoyed that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do like it, but I just don't. It's just not my favorite of the three, and I think often that happens to the last one in a trilogy. And I don't mean to be disappointed by it. I don't want to be disappointed by it.
No.
And I don't think I am disappointed by it. It just, the other two caught something more in me than this did.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's not a criticism of it. It's my personal taste.
Yeah. I do think as a series of films, though, I think for me it's one of the more overall one of the better trilogies, one of the more consistent trilogies.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah, definitely.
And not to like throw shade at like any other franchises out there, but these three films all had the same director, with the same vision.
Yeah.
And
But also it had the same format, the same sort of jeopardy.
Yeah.
The even some of the same actors, the same scenes.
Yeah.
So even though it evolved and changed in each film, because it held on to the stuff that signposted our way through the films, and that we had those things that were the same, it felt comfortable.
Yes.
And it felt like you knew what you were watching and you knew what was going on. And I think that's really clever.
Yes. Do you know what makes me like? I often think with Back to the Future. Not that I don't try to find loopholes in the films, but I often like rethink the stuff that's happened in the films. And something I was thinking about earlier today was, and I'll try not to make it too confusing.
Oh, I can't wait.
Right. So, Marty McFly, he's obviously from 1985, right? No matter what, he is from that time.
Yes, right? The one we are watching, yes.
Right. He is the one that time travels the most in that trilogy.
Yes.
I think. Because Doc Brown doesn't travel back in time himself in 1985, right?
No.
Marty goes back to 1955.
Yeah.
That's where he meets Doc.
Yeah.
They talk about flux capacitor. Then Marty goes forward back in time to 85.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really, does he? He only just goes back like 10 minutes because he runs around the corner in 55, doesn't he?
Yes, that's right. Yes. Right.
So that's the same Marty. So he's back in 55.
Yeah.
Doc faints. Wakes up back in his house. This is right so far, isn't it?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, no, that's it. Right. So then in this timeline, it's... Oh my god, I've confused myself.
Oh no, you have to continue.
I should have drawn this. I should have gone like a board and like drawn like Doc 1, Doc 2 or whatever. Well, the point is, Marty McFly travels more. That's all I was trying to say.
Oh, right.
That's all I was trying to say.
I think you might have just helped me actually answer one of my questions that I posed to you in this podcast, though. Because I asked you, why are Marty and Doc friends?
Hmm.
Now then, we could have a chicken and egg situation here, a slight paradox happening.
Right.
But let me try and just do what you just did. The Doc in 1985.
Yeah.
When Marty goes back to 1955,
Yes.
he creates the relationship with Doc in 1955
Okay.
by
Yeah.
going there and being like, I've just come from the future, your machine worked, you've got to help me. And they form this bond in 1955. So that when Marty then goes back to 1985 at the end of the first film, and
Yes.
Doc then obviously Doc wore the bulletproof vest,
Yes.
you know, their relationship is the same as what it was for Marty, for Doc, but not for Marty.
Yes. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I know.
So like what I'm trying to say is that the Doc in 1985 who's been waiting all that time to meet Marty,
Has already met him.
but not yet. No, because he wouldn't have met him yet, because he only would have he would have already met him in this
Yes.
particular version of time travel.
Yes.
He would have met him already.
Yeah.
And he would have been wearing the bulletproof vest already.
So is that why he befriends him then?
So he must seek him out at some point.
Yeah.
When Marty becomes old enough and gets him involved in what he's doing and starts a relationship then. But that Doc would have already met Marty.
Yeah, he has
and
the memories.
known Marty and been like, you've shown me that what I do works.
Shit, I didn't even think of that.
Wouldn't it? Would that?
That's right. It's got to be, isn't it?
But then the Doc. Then I'm poking holes in it, because then the Doc in the car park when the Libyans come the first time, in the first film.
Yes.
Like, it all happens so fast, and it looks like it's happened naturally and happening organically.
Yeah.
But wouldn't have Doc had to almost? He would have had to have walked out in front of the Libyans to get shot to make sure Marty got in the car to go back in the first place.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes, that's got to be right. Yeah.
If you look at this film from Doc's point of view, that's why they're friends.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Oh.
Have I spun myself out? Is that right?
No, I think, like, let's face it, if we said all that to Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, then I just go, no. But,
but right
that sounds
now,
right to me. Yeah. So the whole idea, the basis of their relationship is based on time travel.
Yeah, the whole thing.
So because Marty goes back,
Doc meets Marty in 1955 for the first time.
Yes.
And then
decides.
Then knows that come 1985, this boy's got to go back in time to make me make it work.
Yes.
So I've got to work on making it work until then to make sure it does work.
Yes.
In order for it to work in the first place.
Yes.
Oh, I've just spun myself out.
Right, people listening to this now, did you follow all of that? Rewind it. Listen to what we just said again.
I'm just thinking that editing this is going to be an absolute mindfuck.
Did I already say that?
Oh,
you haven't
my
said it yet. I'm
No,
going to say it.
No, do you know what? I'm gonna have to stop now, because I can't top that. I just worked out that film in a new way for the first time.
That's amazing.
That's mental.
Crazy.
So, Stu.
Yes.
If you had to convince somebody who hasn't seen Back to the Future right now to go and watch this trilogy, how would you sell it? 3 things. What are your 3 things about Back to the Future that are going to make someone go out there and watch it?
Right. It's the best way to explain time travel.
What I just did wasn't the best way. Continue.
Right. So yeah, it's the best way to explain time travel. It has very memorable and quirky one-liners. And thirdly, great soundtrack.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I can even add anything to what I've said already, because these films, they're so good
Yes.
in so many ways. They're not perfect. They're a family fun, entertaining film, unless you try to discover why Doc and Marty know each other in the first place, and you
Yeah.
literally start going around in loops.
Yes.
I've literally I can't believe I just spun myself. I'm actually spun out now. I need a drink.
Yeah.
I need like hard liquor.
Do you know what you need in it?
What?
You need a milk chocolate.
I do. That is what I need. That is 100% what I need right this minute. Right, Stu. I feel the need for a movie quote.
Oh, I've got a great one.
Have you really?
Yes.
Okay, go. You have to do this. Okay, I can't wait. I'm excited.
You ready?
Yeah.
Do you like Huey Lewis and the News?
Wait, what? That's the quote.
That's the quote.
What?
Yeah. That's the quote.
This silence is bewilderment. Because we just spoke about them. So I'm like, wait.
Yeah. It was a way to tie it in. Yeah. So
Well.
bit of a callback.
Well.
Yes.
Mind blown.
Thank you for listening to What's Your Fandom. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you could leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, not only will we be your bestest friends forever, but it will also help other listeners to find us. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram, where our username is @fandompod, and on YouTube just search for What's Your Fandom. And we will catch you next time.